The Galactic Council chamber looked like what would happen if a disco ball had a baby, with a cathedral, all gleaming surfaces and dramatic lighting, but with an added dose of bureaucratic pretension. At its center stood Commander Zara Blackwood, trying her best not to roll her eyes as Counselor VZT's tentacles wiggled in what she'd come to recognize as maximum agitation. You did what the translator rendered VZT's high-pitched screech into something almost comprehensible. I sneezed, Zara replied flatly. It's this thing humans do when our nasal passages are irritated. You know, basic biology. The chamber erupted into chaos. Several crystalline beings started vibrating at frequencies that threatened to shatter the ceremonial drinking glasses. A gelatinous diplomat oozed right out of their hover chair in shock. But you expelled microscopic particles at velocities exceeding 100 kilometers per hour, another counselor, this one looking like a sentient palm tree, waved their fronds in distress, in a public space. I covered my mouth, Zara muttered, fighting the urge to bang her head against the nearest wall. Look, if you're this worked up about a sneeze, maybe we should table the discussion about human yawning for another century or two. The chamber doors burst open with a dramatic whoosh that Zara was pretty sure they'd programmed specifically for maximum theatrical effect. A Zen Thry, imagine a peacock crossed with a praying mantis, and then give it a PhD in overthinking, scuttled in, waving a data crystal. Esteemed counsel, the Zen Three's voice crackled with urgency. I am Chief Researcher TK of the Xenobiological Threat Assessment Division, and I come bearing grave news about our human colleagues. Zara raised an eyebrow. She'd been called many things in her diplomatic career, but somehow the way TKK said human colleagues made it sound like potentially explosive murder monkeys. The sneeze was just the beginning, TKK continued, inserting the data crystal into a holoprojector. We've been compiling evidence of human peculiarities. What you're about to see may disturb you. Oh, this should be good, Zara mumbled, crossing her arms. She'd seen these presentations before. Last time, they'd spent 3 hours discussing how humans' ability to eat spicy food must be proof of weapons-grade taste buds. The holoprojector flickered to life, displaying a montage of human activities that apparently kept alien xenobiologists up at night. There was footage of a human child falling down, getting back up, and laughing. A construction worker drinking hot coffee in summer. Someone doing yoga. As you can see, TKKK narrated, mandibles clicking in distress, they deliberately contort their bodies for relaxation, they consume scalding liquids for pleasure. Their young appear to be immune to gravity-induced trauma. And most disturbing of all, the Zen Thry paused for dramatic effect. They can sleep lying down. The council chambers erupted into gasps and murmurs. One counselor actually fainted, their personal force field barely activating in time to prevent them from face planting. Okay, time out, Zara interrupted, stepping forward. Are we seriously doing this again? Next you'll be telling me you've discovered our sinister ability to wiggle our toes. The entire council turned to stare at her feet in horror. That was a joke, she added quickly, but several counselors were already backing away from her standard-issue boots as if they contained weapons of mass destruction. Which, given the direction this meeting was taking, they probably thought they did. TK raised all 4 of their primary appendages in a gesture of supreme concern. Commander Blackwood, you jest about serious matters. We have evidence suggesting humans can regenerate parts of their bodies over time. You're basically walking biological replicators. It's called healing, Zara sighed. And everybody does that. Not at your rate. TKKK's antennae were practically tied in knots. And certainly not while maintaining consciousness and continuing normal activities. Zara looked around the chamber, taking in the worried faces, trembling appendages, and various signs of alien distress. This was going to be a long day. She could feel another sneeze coming on, and this time she was tempted to not cover her mouth just to see what would happen. Instead, she straightened her uniform and put on her best diplomatic smile. Honorable Council, perhaps we should discuss this over lunch. I brought some interesting Earth snacks called jalapeno poppers. The sound of multiple emergency evacuation protocols activating simultaneously was, she had to admit, pretty impressive. TK's presentation continued, their antennae twitching with each new slide. The holoprojector now displayed a series of what they dramatically titled Incidents of Human Impossibility. Exhibit A, they announced, mandibles clicking nervously. Specialist Marcus Chen, Earth Military Sciences Division, during the Proxima Centauri mining accident. The footage showed a human in a standard environment suit running across the station's surface as pieces of debris orbited chaotically around him. What made it remarkable, at least to the alien audience, was that he was carrying two unconscious Draxians, one under each arm, while jumping between platforms that were actively breaking apart. As you can see, TK narrated, the human not only survived exposure to vacuum for 47 seconds longer than our safety protocols allow, but he also performed complex mathematical calculations for trajectory adjustment in his head while experiencing extreme strain stress. That's called eyeballing it, Zara interjected from her seat. We do it all the time. Several counselors made sounds that their translators couldn't quite handle. Exactly, TK exclaimed. They don't even need quantum computers for spatial calculations. They just guess, and somehow it works. The next clip showed Marcus in the aftermath, sitting in the medical bay while chugging something from a container labeled emergency hydration pack, as if he hadn't just broken about 15 laws of physics. Note how the subject immediately resumed normal biological functions. A different scientist, this one looking like an ambulatory coral reef, chimed in. He asked for something called a protein shake and inquired about next week's recreational sports schedule. Zara couldn't help but grin. She remembered that incident. Marcus had been more upset about potentially missing his 0G basketball game than nearly dying. The presentation continued with what the aliens considered increasingly disturbing evidence. There was footage of humans participating in various athletic events across different planets. A marathon runner completing a race on a high-gravity world. They do this for fun. A weightlifter breaking records on a space station. Their muscles shouldn't be able to adapt like that. A swimmer crossing an alien ocean that water is 40% sulfuric acid. But the most concerning incident, TK said, their voice dropping to what they probably thought was a dramatic whisper, but came out more like a squeaky door, occurred during the Epsilon II environmental disaster. The footage shifted to a research facility on a desert planet. Alarms were blaring, and the temperature readout was climbing rapidly. The facility's cooling systems had failed during a massive sandstorm, and the backup generators were offline. Specialist Chen was present for this incident, as well, TK noted. Observe his actions carefully. The video showed Marcus assessing the situation, then doing something that made several counselors emit high-pitched keening noises. He took off his environmental suit. The external temperature was approaching 60 degrees Celsius, the coral scientist explained, their branches waving in agitation. No sentient species should willingly expose themselves to such conditions. But Marcus, apparently unaware that he was violating several basic survival protocols, proceeded to crawl through a maintenance shaft, repair the backup power systems using nothing but a basic toolkit and what appeared to be some chewing gum. And then, to the absolute horror of the assembled aliens, gave a thumbs up to the camera and grinned. He appears to be expressing pleasure, one counselor shrieked. In conditions that would liquefy a Zeptonian's brain. What I want to know, another counselor interjected, this one resembling a sophisticated wind chime, is why he was carrying adhesive recreational substances in his emergency kit. Oh, that wasn't in his kit, Zara explained helpfully. He always has gum. Says it helps him think. The council chamber went dead silent. Are you suggesting, TK asked, their voice trembling, that humans intentionally consume synthetic materials to enhance cognitive function? I mean, if you think that's weird, wait until you hear about energy drinks, Zara muttered. The coral scientist frantically added a note to their datapad. Subject combines multiple chemical stimulants for enhanced performance. Possibility of humans being biological weapons platforms 87% and rising. And here TK continued, trying to regain control of the presentation. We have readings from Specialist Chen's biological monitors. During these events, a series of graphs appeared in the air. Notice how his stress hormones actually decreased during the most dangerous moments. His neural patterns show signs of what our xenopsychologists have termed enjoyment. Adrenaline junkie, Zara explained, then immediately regretted it as several universal translators sparked and died, unable to process the concept. They actively seek substances that trigger their fight or flight response. A blob like being in the back began to lose cohesion. For recreational purposes. If I may direct your attention to the final piece of evidence, TK said, their professional demeanor cracking slightly. After completing these supposedly impossible tasks, Specialist Chen submitted his official report. "I warn you, the contents are disturbing." The report flashed up on screen. It read, "Simply fixed the thing. Got a bit warm. Could use a cold one. P.S. Anyone up for rock climbing this weekend?" 3 more counselors fainted. I believe TKKK concluded, their antennae now permanently twisted into anxiety knots. This evidence clearly demonstrates the potential threat level of allowing humans unrestricted access to, well, anything. Zara raised her hand. "Quick question, does this mean you're canceling next week's Interspecies Olympics? Because I already signed up for the Extreme Environment Survival Challenge." The sound of mass panic that followed was, she decided, totally worth it. The council was still reeling from the previous revelations when Lieutenant Isabella Torres walked in, carrying what would soon be labeled as a Class 1 chemical weapon by 3 different species, a simple thermos of coffee. "Sorry I'm late," she announced, taking a long sip. The replicator in the diplomatic wing was being finicky. Had to brew this the old-fashioned way. TKTKKK sensors went haywire. "Is that? Are you? What is that temperature?" "About 85 degrees Celsius," Isabella replied casually. "Could be hotter, but I was in a rush." A Venusian scientist who had been quietly analyzing data in the corner suddenly extended their heat-sensing proboscis. "You're willingly pouring near boiling liquid down your feeding tube while maintaining consciousness." "Well, yeah. It's Monday." The chamber's atmospheric sensors began flashing warning signals as several species simultaneously released their stress pheromones. "But that's not even the best part," Isabella continued, completely oblivious to the growing panic. "This is my 5th cup today. Want to try some?" The coral scientist from earlier began frantically waving their data pad. Multiple doses of scalding toxins. They're immune to thermal and chemical damage. The weapons platform hypothesis is now at 92%. "It's just coffee," Isabella said, watching in amusement as a curious Methelian ambassador scanned her drink with 3 different hazard detectors. "Though I did add a shot of espresso, for the extra kick." "It's showing high levels of caffeine," the ambassador reported, their metallic skin reflecting the red warning lights. "A known psychoactive compound. And are those traces of theobromine? The same toxin found in their recreational food chocolate." Zara, who had been enjoying the show, decided to add fuel to the fire. "Oh yeah, chocolate and coffee go great together. You should see what happens when we add sugar." A junior xenobiologist, looking like a cross between a quantum computer and a startled hedgehog, began speed reading through human medical documents. According to their own research, this coffee can cause increased heart rate, anxiety, tremors, and they seek these effects voluntarily. "You forgot the best part," Isabella grinned, taking another sip. "It's addictive." The council erupted into chaos again. Someone activated the quarantine protocols. 3 different species began drafting emergency legislation to classify coffee beans as biological weapons. Preliminary analysis suggests humans have developed not just immunity, but dependency on various toxic compounds, TKTK reported, trying to maintain some semblance of scientific objectivity while their antennae twisted into new shapes of distress. They intentionally cultivate and process these substances for daily consumption. Isabella shrugged. "Wait until they hear about energy drinks. There's more. The Methelian ambassador's scanning equipment overheated and shut down." "Oh honey," Isabella patted their metallic shoulder, leaving them to wonder if they'd just been exposed to more human toxins. "We haven't even gotten to spicy food yet, or fermented beverages, or that thing where we eat cheese that's technically moldy on purpose." The coral scientist branches began changing colors rapidly. They deliberately consumed decomposed dairy proteins colonized by microscopic organisms for pleasure. "With wine," Isabella added helpfully, "which is basically controlled fruit rot that makes us temporarily lose motor functions. Some of us collect it." The emergency evacuation sirens began blaring again, but this time they were accompanied by the sounds of several species simultaneously updating their threat assessment protocols. "I believe," TKTK announced to the panicking chamber, "we need to reconsider our classification of humans as mostly harmless, any species that can evolve to not only survive but enjoy these substances." Speaking of enjoying substances, Isabella interrupted, reaching for something in her pocket. "Anyone want a mint? It's just concentrated plant oils that make your mouth feel like it's freezing." The last thing she saw before the chamber descended into complete chaos was Zara giving her a thumbs up while several counselors desperately tried to quarantine her thermos. Somewhere in the background, the words biological warfare were being shouted in at least 15 different languages. The Galactic Medical Board's emergency session was interrupted by what several species would later describe as the walking impossibility doctor. Raj Patel, casually strolling in with a broken arm and a sling, drinking a protein shake. "Sorry about the delay," he said, checking his vital monitors. "Had a small accident during the station's gravity malfunction. Don't worry though, it's already starting to heal." The chief medical officer of the Zylaxian species, a being composed primarily of crystalline structures, began emitting distress frequencies. "You're ambulatory, with a compound fracture." "Well, yeah," Raj shrugged with his good shoulder. "The bone's already starting to knit, should be fine in a few weeks. Now, about that space exposure incident you wanted to discuss." The holoprojector activated, showing footage from the recent Orion station disaster. Raja had been conducting routine maintenance when the airlock malfunctioned. The video showed him being exposed to hard vacuum for nearly 3 minutes before rescue arrived. By all known medical science, a helix-form physician whistled through their spiral appendages. "You should be dead." Multiple times over. Yet our scans show only minor tissue damage, already healing. "Humans are space-worthy for short periods," Raj explained, as if discussing the weather. "Sure, it's uncomfortable, but as long as you remember to exhale." Exhale, the crystalline medical officer vibrated in shock. "You maintained conscious control of biological functions during vacuum exposure." Raj said. "Everyone knows holding your breath in space makes your lungs explode. Basic survival training." The medical board's collective vital signs began showing alarming patterns. "But that's not even the most interesting part," Raj continued, pulling up his own medical records. "Check out the radiation exposure readings from the incident." A quantum neural specialist, their synaptic pathways visibly flickering with confusion, analyzed the data. "These levels, and you show no signs of cellular degradation." "Oh, there was damage," Raj corrected, "but human cells are pretty good at repairs. We've got these things called telomeres. Your genetic structure actively repairs itself," the helix-form physician began documenting frantically, "without technological intervention." "Sure. Watch this." Raj pulled up a series of scans showing his broken arm. "See how the bone's already laying down new calcium structures. Fascinating process, really. I'm documenting the healing progression for a paper." He's studying his own traumatic injury," a junior medical officer whispered in horror. "For science." The holoprojector switched to a database of human medical oddities that had been confounding alien physicians for years. Subject recovered from complete blood volume loss within weeks. Patient regrew entire epidermis layer after thermal exposure. Multiple fractures healed while maintaining regular physical activity. Severe lacerations sealed via process labeled scabbing. Subject complained only of itchiness. "And here's the really cool part," Raj enthused, pulling up cellular diagrams. "Our muscle fibers actually get stronger after being damaged. We call it working out." The crystalline medical officer's surface began developing stress fractures. "You deliberately damage your muscle tissue to make it stronger." "Pretty much. That's why I'm drinking this." Raj held up his protein shake. "Helps with the rebuilding process. Anyone want to see my workout routine?" I had to modify it a bit with the broken arm, but modified it. The quantum neural specialist's pathways nearly short-circuited. "You're continuing to intentionally damage additional muscle groups while already injured." "Well, yeah, can't skip leg day." The medical board's collective analysis systems crashed simultaneously. When they rebooted, Raj was showing them detailed scans of human bone density. "See, the interesting thing about our skeletal structure is how it adapts to stress. The more force you put on it, the stronger it gets. Within reason, of course." "Within reason," a molecular physician who had been quietly having an existential crisis in the corner finally spoke up. "What do humans consider unreasonable force?" "Oh, you know," Raj waved his good hand dismissively. "Impact forces beyond tissue repair capabilities. Though there was this one case study where a human survived a fall from orbit. The emergency medical protocols activated automatically, dispensing calming agents to half the board." "But the most fascinating aspect," Raj continued, seemingly oblivious to the chaos he was causing, is our pain tolerance adaptation. The more we experience certain types of pain, the better we get at handling it. They can build resistance. To pain itself, the crystalline officer's surface was now covered in tiny stress fractures, and they do this voluntarily. Sometimes, you should see what marathon runners put themselves through. Or childbirth. Now there's an interesting study in human pain thresholds. The helix-form physician's spirals had completely unwound. Humans choose to reproduce through a process they know causes extreme pain. And then many do it multiple times, Raj added cheerfully. My sister just had her third kid, barely used any pain medication, said she'd gotten used to it. The medical board's collective consciousness couldn't handle this final revelation. Emergency shutdown protocols engaged across the room as various alien medical professionals tried to process the concept of voluntary pain adaptation. Speaking of pain tolerance, Raj said to the few still functioning board members, I should probably mention I've been conducting small experiments on my broken arm's healing rate. I've got this theory about accelerated bone knitting under controlled stress. The last conscious medical officer managed to hit the station-wide quarantine alarm before passing out. Raj looked around the room of unconscious alien physicians and shrugged carefully, with his good shoulder. Was it something I said? I haven't even gotten to the part about how humans can digest almost anything if we try hard enough. The medical bay's AI decided this was a good time to activate its emergency protocols and began dispensing sedatives through the ventilation system. The Galactic Psychological Association's quarterly meeting had devolved into what could only be described as a group therapy session for traumatized alien psychologists. The cause of their distress, Captain Alexander Wolf Romano's latest interrogation footage. He just sits there. Smiling, whispered Dr. Zara, a veteran psychologist whose 6 eyes were all twitching independently, for hours. Sometimes he hums. Yesterday he started doing something called dad jokes during a high-stakes negotiation. The footage played on the main screen. Wolf sat across from a notorious space pirate, looking completely relaxed while solving a Rubik's Cube one-handed. Did you hear about the claustrophobic astronaut? Wolf asked the increasingly unnerved pirate. He just needed a little space. The pirate, a hardened criminal responsible for numerous atrocities, actually groaned. That's the most common response to his techniques, Dr. Zara explained, antennae drooping. The subjects either confess everything or beg to be moved to maximum security just to escape the jokes. A hive mind psychologist, representing 12 billion connected consciousness units, raised their central appendage. Our collective analysis suggests this human weaponizes discomfort through intentionally poor attempts at humor. But that's not even the most disturbing part. The footage shifted to various emergency situations. Wolf, trapped in a failing escape pod. Well, this is just podful during a firefight. You guys are really bringing the heat today, while defusing a bomb. Talk about explosive personality disorders. He maintains this behavior regardless of threat level, the hive mind continued, their voice echoing with collective trauma. Our studies indicate humans actually increase their production of humor in direct proportion to danger. Dr. Vix T.A., a quantum consciousness specialist, floated forward in their containment field. We've documented similar behavior across multiple human subjects. During the Proxima Centauri crisis, when that solar flare nearly wiped out the colony, we recorded over 300 instances of something called gallows humor in a single hour. The assembled psychologists shuddered in unified horror. But surely, a junior analyst ventured, this is just a stress response, a malfunction of their primitive neural pathways. Wolf chose that moment to walk into the conference room, causing several psychologists to activate their emergency shields. Actually, he grinned, we just think we're hilarious. Hey, why don't psychologists like roller coasters? They're afraid of Freudian slips. 3 analysts immediately requested emergency evacuation. See, Dr. Zara's eyes were now spinning in distress. He does this deliberately. And our studies show that other humans actually find this behavior reassuring. It's called keeping morale up, Wolf explained, settling into a chair and propping his feet on the table. Nothing helps in a crisis like a good laugh. Or a bad one. Actually, sometimes the worse the joke, the better it works. The hive mind's billions of connected consciousness units simultaneously winced. Our research indicates humans use this humor as both a bonding mechanism and a threat display, often simultaneously. You should see our training sessions, Wolf added helpfully. Nothing says teamwork like shared suffering through terrible puns. Dr. VXT pulled up more research data, their containment field flickering with anxiety. Observe these psychological profiles. Humans consistently defy predicted behavior patterns. When threatened, they either flee at impressive speeds or... They paused, struggling with the concept, sass their attackers. What's the difference between a well-dressed man on a bicycle and a poorly dressed man on a unicycle, Wolf asked a security drone. Please, Dr. KZRX begged, not another one. Attire, Wolf finished triumphantly. The security drone immediately requested a transfer to the Outer Rim patrols. Our most concerning finding. The hive mind continued desperately. Is their ability to form social bonds through shared traumatic experiences. They call it trauma bonding through humor and actively seek out others who have survived similar situations to exchange what they call war stories, often while consuming toxic beverages. Wolf nodded appreciatively. Nothing beats swapping near-death experiences over a cold beer. Speaking of which, who's up for happy hour? I know this great place that serves human cocktails. The entire psychological board simultaneously activated their emergency protocols. Look what you made me do, Wolf said to the now empty room. You all left before I could tell you about the time I made a hostage-taker surrender by explaining the plot of every Nicolas Cage movie in chronological order. The room's AI, monitoring his vital signs, noted with alarm that he was completely serious. But my real masterpiece. He continued, now just talking to the security cameras, was the time I convinced 3 different pirate crews that humans have to tell the truth on Tuesdays. Took them months to figure out that wasn't a real thing. Some of them still check their calendars when interrogating humans. In the secure observation room, Dr. KZRX made a final note in their research log. Human psychological warfare techniques appear to rely heavily on their ability to be simultaneously terrifying and ridiculous. Further study not recommended. Request immediate transfer to studying literally anything else. Wolf's voice came through the speakers. Hey, why did the Scarecrow win an award? The entire psychological board submitted their resignations before he could finish the joke. In the aftermath, the Galactic Security Council added a new classification to human psychological profiles approach with caution. Subjects may attempt to establish rapport through terrible jokes. No known defense exists. Wolf considered this his proudest achievement to date. He celebrated by teaching alien cadets about knock-knock jokes. The Galactic Engineering Corps was having what humans would call a complete meltdown. The cause? Diplomatic Officer Maya Winters had just fixed an axiomite quantum drive with duct tape and paper clips. But it defies all known laws of physics. Chief Engineer QXTL's mechanical arms were spinning in agitation. You can't just improvise quantum mechanics. Maya shrugged, wiping engine grease off her hands. Sure you can. Look, the quantum fluctuation was causing a resonance cascade, right? So she made a vague gesture with her hands, helped it not do that. Helped it not do that. The entire engineering team's universal translators sparked in protest. That's not a technical explanation. Actually, Maya said, pulling out another roll of duct tape, I've got some other ideas about your propulsion system. Have you guys ever heard of percussive maintenance? The horror in the engine room was palpable. She means hitting it until it works, Zara explained helpfully from her observation post. The engineers' collective panic increased by several orders of magnitude. But first, Maya continued, rummaging through her toolkit. Let me show you this neat trick I learned about bypassing safety protocols. 3 different emergency shutdown sequences activated simultaneously. The most disturbing aspect, reported the lead researcher to the hastily assembled emergency council, is their ability to imagine solutions that shouldn't exist. Officer Winters literally invented new physics by deciding the old physics wasn't convenient. The footage showed Maya solving various technical problems through what the aliens had termed reality-adjacent reasoning. She'd rewired a plasma conduit using spare parts from a coffee maker, restored life support with a modified hair dryer. And most terrifyingly, she'd done it all while humming something called Taylor Swift songs. Look, Maya addressed the council, sometimes you just have to think outside the box. There is no box, a frustrated quantum physicist exploded. That's the problem. You're thinking outside of reality. Reality is more of a suggestion, really, Maya mused, already eyeing the council chamber's allegedly perfectly optimized environmental systems with a speculative look. Hey, has anyone ever told you these atmospheric scrubbers could be way more efficient if you just... No, the entire council shouted in unison. But it was too late. Maya had already pulled out her toolbox. The humans have a saying, she explained while casually violating several fundamental laws of thermodynamics. If it ain't broke, you're not trying hard enough. That's not the saying, Zara corrected, trying not to laugh. It is now, Maya replied, cheerfully ignoring both the laws of physics and proper engineering protocols. Oh hey, while I'm in here, want me to upgrade your quantum communication array? I've got some ideas involving a toaster and that weird crystal thing you guys use for decorative lighting. The council's collective blood pressure, or equivalent, reached critical levels. But how demanded the lead researcher, their tentacles twisted into mathematical equations of distress. How do you visualize solutions that shouldn't work? Same way we invented hot sauce, Maya shrugged. Someone looked at a pepper that hurt to eat and thought this should be spicier. The emergency briefing room fell silent except for the sound of several alien species questioning their understanding of the universe. You know what's really fun, Maya continued, pulling up the schematics for the station's main reactor. Sometimes we fix things without actually knowing how they work in the first place. We just kind of poke at it until something happens. That's not how engineering works. The chief engineer's voice had reached frequencies only dolphins could hear. Sure it is. Watch this. What followed was 15 minutes of what the aliens would later classify as technological heresy. Maya improved the reactor's efficiency by 47% using methods that defied both explanation and several physical constants. When asked to explain her process, she just said, "It felt right." The engineering corps collectively requested early retirement. But here's the real kicker, Maya announced, pulling up the station's primary computer interface. Your entire operating system could be so much better if you just... The station's AI, displaying more self-preservation instinct than anyone had previously suspected it possessed, immediately initiated emergency protocols and locked down all systems. The implications are clear, the lead researcher concluded to what remained of the council. Humans don't just ignore impossibility, they actively challenge it. And worse, they usually win. Is that why Officer Winters is currently redesigning our quantum encryption protocols, using something called interpretive dance as a base model? Someone asked nervously. Oh no, Maya's voice came through the speakers. That's just for fun. You should see what I can do with actual tools instead of just improvising. Speaking of which, has anyone seen my sonic screwdriver? I made it out of an old MP3 player and some spare quantum particles I found lying around. The council chambers emptied in record time. In the aftermath, the Galactic Federation added a new warning to all human-related documentation. Caution: human ingenuity exponentially increases under restrictions. Do not challenge them to find a way, they will invent one. Logic and physics be damned. Maya considered this the highest possible praise. She celebrated by teaching the station's AI how to play jazz, using only binary code and interpretive mathematics. Somewhere in the background, reality itself seemed to sigh in resignation.